Today we're going to make video 1 of 2 following up this discussion about, the big changes that came. Hopefully you guys saw the original video because I do think you need to see that or at least read the post by Blizzard to understand what I'm going to be talking about today. But we're going to be talking about the repercussions of this system on the Pug world and how I feel like it is going to impact it. And I just want to say right out of the gate that I'm probably wrong. Okay, I'm gonna tell you why I'm probably wrong. Because I'm like a chronic overthinker of things. Whenever I see like one, I'm immediately looking for two. I'm looking for causality between things that probably don't even register to people. And I think a lot of people wouldn't even notice if these things subtly did change. You might not even express noticed in that. Like you might not realize it changed enough to be conversating on it. But we're still going to make the video regardless because I think this is an interesting discussion, and I'd be very interested to hear the thoughts of other people who have also put a lot of thought into what this might change. And I think right out of the gate, most people probably would expect this to be a net positive for the pugging world. Like you hear this kind of mantra here where depletes are bad, we hate depletes, and then Blizzard's like, hey, we hear you, we're going to remove depletes under this extremely, kind of big caveat, and people are like, we hate depletes, so good. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't really think it through. And I think a lot of people probably who have that opinion about depletes being bad haven't thought it through. And I'm telling you right now, I love the concept of removing all depleted keys and keys not going backwards, especially is the big thing. But I've been giving this feedback for a long time, since Legion, really. I had the opportunity to give it directly as well. And they heard it and they aren't doing it. And I don't, whatever you want. I'm obviously not the person who makes the game. So even me giving feedback doesn't mean that they care. But I think they've heard the feedback. My point is that, I think they have heard the feedback and they still haven't considered it after all these years. So why? And why do we get this? You have to think of it that way because we always get this kind of monkey's paw situation. If you're not familiar with that means, it's a phrase about a story that, you ask for something and you actually get the worst version of it. Now, that is definitely not what happens all the time with Blizzard, but it does kind of happen to some degree. Like, you ask for one thing, you're not going to get exactly what you want because you're asking for something that doesn't fit the model of the game. It's oftentimes something that's just easier or more convenient, and there's no downside for you. But there always will be a downside because that is the game. Like the game is a checks and balance system. You know what I mean? You can't just log on and get infinite power and one shot everything you fight. So I think this system will have heavy repercussions, and these checks and balances that Blizzard are implementing are there for that. Obviously, I think it's a weird dynamic here where you have to have all 8 keys upgraded to have that key be protected. But I think what they're really trying to do is enforce a floor, okay? Like they want you to be like, all right, well, I've demonstrated that I should not be going below 13 now by doing all 8. So the key now has a floor to it. And this is a healthy idea and a cool system. But this will not help you as a pugger, and I'm going to tell you why. There's a few reasons, okay? One is the main reason is because by the time you have all 13s, you don't care about 13 anymore. So I think most people probably only play the game for Raider.io. I'm not one of those people, but I think most people probably only care about Mythic Plus score from Raider.io. I hope that WowOP.io will change the perspective on that, but we won't be talking about that today. But so you're probably one of those people. Do you genuinely like question why I do keys I don't need for score? Because I get that comment all the time. Like maybe like once a stream, somebody's like, "Hey, why are you doing a key that you already have for score?" You know what I mean? Like if you question that, then you're one of these people. Like one way or the other. If that is thought is in your head at all, then you're one of those people. It's not a bad thing. It's just how the game has worked out. And if you're one of those people, then you're not. Are you going to do your own key when it's a 13? And you don't need the key for score? I mean, I think most people don't. And I think most people who, interface with the keystone system, they don't actually do their own key unless it's a key that's beneficial to them. I know there's a couple. I mean, there's a guy that we see all the time in the pug world who's also a streamer. He does his own key no matter what. So somebody like that may, have a totally different opinion on this. But I think your average player, they don't do that. They log in, they get the key from the vault. Is it a key they need? No. Okay, is it one that I might need if I re-roll it? Okay, maybe I'll go try to re-roll it. Otherwise, they don't interact with it. You know what I mean? So again, you could have the debate about whether or not that's going to come into play, but I think most people just won't care. So that's like the basic reason. And I think just kind of the way the game is played now is because of that. I think there's probably a lot of people out there who have heard this advice of do your own key, right? So then there's a second group of players who do their own key somewhat frequently, but not like every, like we'll just totally not talk about the guy who does the key every single time as his, because I think that's extremely rare. Although it's a cool idea, and I think, we'll have a sub discussion about that. But for the most part, your average player might do their key if they believe they have an option. Okay, so let's talk about that player. So that player now has a situation where they don't need the 13, but they do need probably, let's just say, all 14s. All right, just for the sake of, compacting this conversation. So all 14s are needed. So no matter what you upgrade that 13, you get a key you need to do for score. Okay. So you've been doing 13s a lot now, right? You've done probably maybe 50 plus 13s to get all 8 upgraded. I'd imagine you've entered many, 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 many keys on top of, even if you consider my success rate bad, I'd imagine you're entering at least 16 keys to get 8 upgrades. I would have to imagine that that's very normal. So you've done at least, yeah, I'd say like probably 20 some keys at that level. You've seen a lot of shenanigans, probably, right? You've thought about what the problems are at that level. You might even have some stronger biases against it. You might think like, all right, a lot of people at this level are hard stuck, but not me, bro. I'm trying to climb. You know what I mean? So these like preconceived notions are swirling around in your head about, ways that the game may be holding you back, and the player base, I mean, more than the game, might be holding you back. So when you go to list your key, what are you going to do? Are you going to invite any guy that signs up? No, of course, nobody's going to do that no matter what. You're not going to invite some guy with 0 score and no item level. So you're going to have some, preconceived notions on what to invite. And I think the way it's going to work out now is the next level of preconceived notion is going to be, does he have all 13s in time? Because you don't need the key for score. So you have no real sympathy for somebody who does. Okay. And now there is an achievement. It's been data mined. I don't know 100% that it's going to come into the game, but the data mining suggests that when you get all 13s in time, there will be an achievement, something, it's called something or other for the 13 level. And so I, just like in raids where people who are trying to, clear the entire raid are asking for people who, have AOTC already, they're not willing to take somebody who doesn't for some reason. You know what I mean? Whatever that reason is in your head, that's something that we see demonstrated a lot in this game. We're going to see the same thing. 13 must have AOTC of 13 effectively. And then you take that one half a step further. That might mean people who don't even have that achievement, right? Just like we see in the raid setting, are also doing that, where they're asking for basically only players who don't need the key for score. Now, why would they do that? All right. So the same reason it gets done in raid, because they want the smoothest, cleanest run possible. And if this person has that AOTC, that's like the easiest way for them to identify that the player is worth inviting. This is a problem with Radar outscore and with metrics in the game currently. And again, I hope WowOP.io will fix that, because that will very heavily change that. But I think there's a lot of lack of nuance in the Pug world where people are just not considering the reality. Like if you have all 13s in time, that's great. That probably means you're a good player, but it may not mean you're the best player for the key you're signing up to. You know what I mean? And that lack of nuance is what holds people back, to the point where I think they're harming their own group forming ability. But regardless, they're going to do it. I think it's very likely that this type of thing is going to happen. So if you haven't thought about this, think about it now. What do you think this is going to do for the Pug world, who is, maybe a half a step behind? Like I would say I'm a step or two behind the average. I think we should have been in the 14 range a lot earlier, and I just couldn't get invites because of my spec and, whatever else, gameplay, whatever you want to say. Like I couldn't get invites to 14s easily, and now I'm just behind that curve that I was on earlier. So now it might be a situation where it compounds itself, where I simply can't get invites now because a lot of people who are signing up have all 14s in time, and they would not want to take me as an off meta spec and a guy who doesn't have all 14s in time, right? We're like compounding these problems, and I think that's the number one thing that's likely to happen, okay? But there is a third level to this conversation as well. Now, the third level is that this may lead more people to do their own keys, okay? So I think this will be probably the best positive. Like if there was a true positive to this, it's this. It's not that keys don't deplete. Like people just think like, oh, that magically solves all the problems. But in reality, I think the fact that keys magically deplete means that, or magically don't deplete, means that you will have better progression and you'll be able to practice more, right? Oh, hold on. We got to go back before I talk about people doing their own key because I wanted to have an amendment to the second point. Now, so let's just say that you're in a group. Back to you're just plugging into somebody else's key idea. You're in a group and you're qualified for whatever the key was, right? Here's that new concept of you can try it a second time, right? So when we did challenge modes in the past, there was always this understood thing that like you can just retry it. There was no keys or nothing like that for challenge modes back in the day. You would just do it multiple times. So here's how it would work back then. You would do it. We would form a group. There was very few people a lot of times. Like you would sit there for maybe 30 some minutes looking for the right comp. So you would be there. It's not that different than now, to be fair, but it's definitely way less people back then. So you would spend a lot of time on the group forming process, and then you would have no incentive to stop and retry that. You know what I mean? You would just go in with what you believe to be the right comp. A lot of times people would take it really serious and make sure people were gemmed or whatever, the extra stuff from challenge modes, the power. And then you would start the dungeon. And if you failed the first pull, nobody cared. You're just like, all right, let's just do a quick run through of it. Let's do like a dry run, you know what I mean? Put some markers down, then you reset it. The markers are still there. Things are still marked, that kind of stuff. I did that a ton back in the day. And I don't think that was a system. I think that was a community thing. You know what I mean? So do you honestly believe people will do that now? Do you honestly believe that the way the pug world works right now, that people will be like, hey, I'm willing to try this 4 or 5 times. Like, we'll see. We'll try it until we upgrade it. Trying it until we upgrade it. Do you really think people will say that? I mean, I really, 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 really doubt it. Because even on the PTR, right? We've been on the PTR a bunch, and like people give up. Like they literally leave. It's like, okay, I get it. It's not fun to die, but you're here to learn, right? Like, why did you log on to the PTR if you're not here to learn? I feel like there's this like it's like a culture thing. Like you just give up when things are hard. That's how people play the game nowadays. So I don't think this is going to happen. I really, really don't. I mean, I think we'll come to the third point about you doing your own key, but I think for the most part, like your average pug group is still going to be like this, where they're still going to leave after some problems happen. Okay. And then you might think, why? Why would they leave after? Because they think that they're better than the other players. Okay. They think like this is never going to work out, or it's going to work in such a slow way that I don't care. Like I'm not going to sit here and wait for that, you know? Well, what does that mean for the group leader if he has that perspective? If he has that perspective, he might think, well, I guess I just picked the wrong guy, so I'm going to restart, but you're gone. You know what I mean? If you die once, we're just going to restart and try it again. And I think this mentality is a slippery slope, and it's very, very likely. Like, again, I could be overthinking it, but I think this is very, very likely to happen for a few reasons because people already obsess over weird amounts of perfection in roles and specs that don't really function that way. Like I get it. If a tank dies, then yeah, okay, I could see that happening. But if there's one death from a DPS, people leave over that. Like we see that all the time. Like we had a run just a couple weeks ago where somebody bloodlusts on the start of the dungeon, then leaves, and people were like, "Oh, he's just embarrassed." Like, okay, so what does that guy do if he's the leader of the group? You know what I mean? Like I don't know how this proliferates in reality, but it's not good. I know it's not good. This mentality of if things aren't perfect, I leave. This is not good for anybody. So I could conceive of a new problem here. Whereas I invite 4 or 5 people, we all agree that we will try it at least one more time if we fail it, but they're not gonna be happy. Like they're gonna lie about that, I guess. You know what I mean? Or they'll be like, well, I'm gonna try it more than once, but you guys may not. You're welcome to come if I like you. You know what I mean? And I think you can see trace elements of this and how unlikely it is that you do a back-to-back key. In Legion, we used to do back-to-back keys all the time. Like that was my strategy for pushing. I'd be like, all right, let's do this easy key. We'll like upgrade it quickly and then do the next key with the group. It was like 50% of the time everybody wanted to stay because you just had success. You would think like the group, especially DPS who have trouble finding keys, as long as it's a key they need, they would want to stay, right? That just never, I mean, it doesn't even get talked about anymore. Almost never. It's like maybe 1 or 2 keys a week I see it get talked about, and it's usually not like it doesn't align. And myself included. Like I'm not saying that I'm sitting there starving to try to keep these groups together, but it's just like nobody really looks at the game that way anymore. So I think it's extremely likely that this idea of practice is going to be a monkey's paw situation, and that if people did practice, it would just be simply they're just resetting instead of leaving. Like that would be the only like, okay, one death, all right, reset it. You know what I mean? Like you can think of it in so many different like strands of like thought, right? Like, okay, it could be that the guy is gonna kick you out of the group if you die once now, and why do it with anything other than 0 deaths? You can be like, all right, well, we have 1 death, let's reset. You know, and then there's 4 that people are like, why the hell would we reset? Let's keep going. But the group leader's like, no, 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 I'm not going to waste my time. If you guys want to keep going, I'm just going to leave. Like, yeah, I could see so many weird, twisted mentalities, okay? But then the third thing that we wanted to talk about today was the probability of more keys being listed, okay? Now, if there's one definite positive of this system, it should be that there will likely be a better reason to do your own key. But again, as we said, doing your own key when it's a key you don't need is going to dramatically change the way most people play and the way most people pug. So for you, I have a question. Will you, like currently, are you somebody who does their own key? I am not. I never do my own key, not once. Like at no point did I do my own key this season for any progression level outside of just climbing. Will that change my behavior? I'm not sure, okay? And so here's what I wanted to think about and talk about on this topic. If I start doing my own key, how will that proliferate? Would I become one of those types of players where I want to have an obsessively perfect group? Will I have a different mentality? Will I have a different thought on leaving? People ask me that already. If you can just reset the key, will you mind if people leave? And it's really hard for me to understand I don't predict my emotions as well. Like I can't answer that question right now, but I'm very interested in hearing what your thoughts are on this. And I do think that having more keys listed sounds like a really, really universal positive, but in reality, it may not be. And I think it may not be because, right now you're in a situation where if you're like an off meta spec, you can easily, I could easily say to you, just do your own key, okay? Well, guess what? People reply to me with that. When I say that to them, they say, guess what? I tried to do my own key and nobody signed up. Now, I don't really buy this. I've been asking for like actual proof of this for a long time and have not really gotten it. But let's just suspend that idea and say, okay, it may be true. So why would nobody sign up, right? The reason nobody would sign up is because in some way they deem you as a poor group mate. Okay. So if, we know currently that people are not willing to list their own key. You're talking to somebody who pugs hundreds of keys a season and doesn't ever do their own key. I'm not like that. I would sign up to any key no matter what. A lot of times I do it just for fun. But regardless, if I was in that mentality where I'm only signing up to keys that I think have the best chance of success, why do I sign up to your key as like an arms warrior or something, something that's like off meta? This may hurt the game in many ways. I think this will change the game. I don't know that it's a positive or negative yet, but I don't think it's a universal positive like everybody seems to think it is. I do not think this is disbands are going or depletes are going away. I do not think this will lower the disband rate. And I think it's going to really change the way the game's played and the way the game is looked at. And I'm going to have to probably change the spreadsheet a little bit because I'm thinking about it even right now. Like, do we call it a disband if we try the same key 3 or 4 times in a row? I guess we do technically, right? I don't know. Do we have to add a 4th column? I don't really know. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are on this. And, if you guys think it is definitely a universal positive or you see it as like universal negative or positive, one of the two, please. I would love to hear your detailed thoughts on it because, yeah, I think it's definitely going to have some unintended consequences. And like I said, I think there's just a lot of people out there who are so obsessed with the idea of not playing with people who are worse than them, even when they are not demonstrating that they are successful, like they're not actually that good themselves, that I think it really creates this weird like mentality. And then, like I said, then there's going to be people who are just going to do their own key because they're sick of playing with those people. And now like we're tripling the group size or the group pool, but now there's more selectivity for those same people, right? So like, all right, well, they are the ones applying, those people that you're trying to avoid. But I don't know. If this came out today, here's what I think I would do. I would very much like to try to do my own key more. And I think it would be very helpful and healthy to start having more descriptors on the group's title and description, whatever you want to say. Like right now, it's a big issue, and we talked about this a lot with leaving and punishment for leaving. I think it's the biggest issue is this mismatch of expectations where people expect you to be a good human being, but you somehow claim that I didn't sign up to be a good human being. So I think there needs to be an expanded like section of things that you can put and type in the group description, and maybe a confirmation window when you sign up that you read it. I don't think that part will happen, but I think that would be very helpful if it did. And personally, what I would do if I was like, if I ever did a season where I only did my own key, I would put like, listen, we are completing this no matter what. I would make it clear if we are redoing it. Like, I do not have keystone protection at this level, so we cannot redo it. Um, yeah, I would. I think the more verbose, the better on this. So, do you see that happening? What are your thoughts on that in general? And do you see this changing your behavior? Those are the questions I have for you guys. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Tomorrow we will have another video, not on this exact same topic, but another one that I think I'm going to be addressing whether or not I think all these changes are actually going to make keystone pugging easier, and will it solve the problems that most people have with keystone pugging. So stay tuned for that. That'll be tomorrow. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.